A fool doesn't announce himself by screaming, "I am foolish." He doesn't need to. His habits, his posture, his desperate need to be liked, these betray him more than any confession could. In Machiavelli's world, a fool is not merely someone who lacks intelligence. He is someone who misreads the game of power, misplaces his trust, and misunderstands the nature of people. And in doing so, he not only becomes a pawn, but a disposable one. The 6 signs of a fool man are not dramatic, loud spectacles. They are subtle, habitual, and often praised by the very society that aims to control him. The first sign of a fool man is he seeks validation more than victory. He wants to be applauded. He wants others to know he's a good guy, and he will betray his own interests to get that image polished. He will over-explain, overshare, and over-apologize. He's the type to write a paragraph to justify his delay, or to nervously laugh when disrespected in a room. He doesn't realize that every time he seeks reassurance, he is handing out a piece of his power. Machiavelli saw such men as liabilities, because men like these are easily ruled. All it takes is a little praise, and they become loyal servants. Give them the illusion of approval, and they'll follow you into ruin. This man will tell himself he's being kind, he's being polite, but in truth, he's addicted to others thinking well of him. He forgets that power is not given to those who ask nicely. Power is seized, often by those who stop needing permission. The second sign, he talks more than he listens. The fool believes that speaking makes him important. That volume equals authority. So he rambles. He interrupts. He fills silences with nervous words. But what he doesn't see is that every word he says is a window. The more he speaks, the more the room learns about him, his weaknesses, his insecurities, his true intentions. A man who cannot remain silent is a man who cannot hold mystery, and a man with no mystery has no leverage. Machiavelli often noted that the most dangerous men in history said the least. They let others speak and reveal themselves, because every conversation is a battlefield. The wise man watches, he probes, he studies. The fool declares himself in full before the war has even begun. He thinks he's winning allies by being open, but all he's doing is giving the enemy a map of his mind. A third mark of the fool. He assumes morality is universal. He walks into the world believing that people should play fair, that truth always wins, and that goodness will be rewarded. This is the man who is constantly shocked when people lie, cheat, manipulate. He cries betrayal, as if betrayal were rare. But Machiavelli would say, this man is not betrayed. He is simply waking up. The fool believes that because he wouldn't do it, others won't. He projects his ethics onto the world like a child expecting a mirror. But the world is not a mirror, it's a maze. And those who expect honesty at every corner are the ones who get ambushed. A wise man assumes deception. He plans for it. He never moves blindly based on sentiment or assumed loyalty. He knows that when you expect people to act like saints, you become the perfect victim. And this is what separates the powerful from the powerless. Not strength, not wealth, but perception. The fool sees what he wants to see. The strategist sees what is. The fourth sign is harder to notice but far more dangerous. He believes effort guarantees results. This man works hard. He grinds. He suffers. He sacrifices. But it's all blind. He thinks that the universe keeps score, and that sheer hustle will one day deliver him success. This is the worker bee who never becomes king. This is the man who dies loyal to a system that never rewarded him. Machiavelli would scoff at the modern obsession with hard work. He knew that labor without strategy is slavery. That effort without leverage is martyrdom. The fool believes that just by doing the right thing, doors will open. He refuses to play politics. He avoids confrontation. He keeps his head down and wonders why no one notices him. This man forgets the fundamental truth. People reward you not for effort, but for perceived value. And value, in a world of wolves, is about optics, not honesty. You must look powerful, useful, or dangerous. The fool just looks tired. And then comes the fifth sign. He forgives without learning. The fool believes that forgiveness is always noble, that forgetting pain makes him virtuous. So he lets people back in. He gives second, third, fourth chances. He tells himself, they didn't mean it, or worse, I'm strong enough to handle it. But Machiavelli knew repetition is not strength, it's self-betrayal. When a man is wronged and still chooses peace with no boundary, he is not being spiritual. He is being submissive. The wise man may forgive, but he never forgets. And more importantly, he adapts. The fool does not adapt. He recycles. He keeps toxic people in rotation. He keeps walking into the same traps with a smile. He mistakes emotional endurance for wisdom. But pain that doesn't teach is just pain. And a man who tolerates repeated disrespect is not a good man. He's a fool with a bleeding leash around his neck. Finally, the sixth sign is the most fatal. He confuses peace with safety. He thinks that avoiding conflict keeps him secure. He stays silent when insulted. He avoids difficult conversations. He tolerates small humiliations for the sake of not causing trouble. He thinks that by being inoffensive, he will be untouched. But this is the biggest lie the fool believes, that danger only comes when you provoke it. In reality, predators don't hunt the loudest. They hunt the weakest, the silent, the overly compliant, the man who is so afraid of being disliked that he becomes invisible. Peace, when unearned, becomes permission. And the more you avoid conflict, the more the world pushes, tests, violates. Because silence does not command respect, it signals submission. Machiavelli understood this well. He advised princes not to appear too merciful, too mild, too lenient, because in doing so, they invite disobedience. A wise man picks his battles, yes, but a fool avoids all of them and dies by 1,000 cuts he never fought back against. All six signs stem from one fatal misunderstanding: the belief that the world will love you if you're nice enough. That truth speaks for itself. That decency guarantees protection. But the world Machiavelli saw, and the one we still live in, is ruled not by virtue, but by perception, strategy, and leverage. A fool man doesn't lose because he's not good enough. He loses because he plays the wrong game entirely. And what's worse, he keeps playing it even as it destroys him. The tragedy of the fool man is not just that he is powerless, but that he often doesn't even know it. He believes his suffering makes him noble, his obedience makes him safe, and his good intentions make him immune to harm. But in Machiavelli's ruthless framework, such a man is not noble. He is predictable, not safe. He is vulnerable, not immune. He is marked. The deeper you examine these six signs, the more you realize they are not flaws in isolation. They form a web. Each one feeds the next. The need for validation makes him speak too much. His excessive talking reveals his naive morality. His morality causes him to overwork without strategy. His blind effort leads to constant disappointment, which he forgives without change. And in forgiving without change, he seeks peace, believing peace is protection. And just like that, he becomes the perfect pawn. A man who is loyal, hardworking, kind, moral, and completely powerless. Machiavelli never mocked goodness outright. He mocked the idea that goodness alone wins. That virtue, without teeth, is anything more than a decoration. He understood that power is not about being right. It's about being unreadable, unshakable, and most importantly, untouchable. The fool is the opposite. He is easily read, easily swayed, and always touched by guilt, pity, or fear. And here's the cruel twist. Society rewards him for being this way. He is praised for being a team player, admired for being so down-to-earth, and pitied for being too good for this world. But none of that praise gives him power. In fact, that praise is often a leash, because those in power need the fool. They need men like him to absorb the pain, to keep the machine running, to never question, to always forgive. The fool is not a threat, and that's exactly why the world lets him live. But a man who wants to rise, who wants real control, must see the fool in himself and kill it. He must reverse every one of these signs until they become weapons. Instead of seeking validation, he must cultivate indifference. He must become so deeply secure in his own judgment that applause feels unnecessary and criticism feels irrelevant. The powerful man does not crave to be understood. He demands to be respected. And sometimes, respect begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. Instead of speaking freely, he must master silence. Silence isn't emptiness, it's tension. A room where everyone is speaking looks harmless. A room where one man listens silently while others talk begins to shift. People become cautious. They wonder what he's thinking. Silence creates presence, and presence builds pressure. The fool talks to release pressure. The powerful man lets it build until the room folds. Instead of assuming people are honest, he must assume they are strategic. Not evil, strategic. He must stop looking at people through the lens of morality and start looking at them through the lens of motive. What do they want? What are they afraid of? What do they admire? And what do they resent? When you stop assuming goodness, you begin to notice patterns. You stop being shocked by betrayal and start anticipating it. Instead of working blindly, he must work with precision. The powerful man doesn't just work hard, he makes every effort count. He knows that a single well-placed action can have more impact than 1,000 hours of obedience. He studies leverage. He doesn't waste time impressing people who have no power. He aligns himself only with those who can affect his trajectory, and he makes himself indispensable to them. Instead of forgiving without adjustment, he must become a student of patterns. He must track who drains him, who lies to him, who disrespects his boundaries, and cut without mercy. Forgiveness without distance is not strength, it's exposure. The powerful man doesn't hold grudges, but he never gives the same person 2 chances to exploit him. And finally, instead of avoiding conflict, he must learn to welcome calculated confrontation. Not chaos, not recklessness, but controlled displays of power. Saying no, calling out disrespect, walking away publicly. The man who can calmly confront disrespect becomes feared in the most subtle way. Not because he lashes out, but because he never tolerates being treated as lesser. And when others sense this, they adjust before testing him. This transformation, from fool to force, is not loud. It doesn't come from shouting, "I've changed." It comes from a quiet series of internal decisions. To stop explaining, to stop chasing, to stop tolerating. And slowly, without fanfare, a new reputation forms. People stop interrupting you. They stop assuming you'll say yes. They start watching what they say around you, because something has shifted. You no longer carry the energy of a man hoping to be spared. You carry the energy of a man who is not to be touched. Machiavelli would argue that this shift is not immoral, it is necessary. Because in a world governed by power, mercy is not always a virtue. It is often a strategy. And to wield it properly, you must first be feared enough for your mercy to mean something. The fool man shows mercy because he is afraid of being harsh. The strategist shows mercy because he chooses to, because his wrath is an option on the table. So, how do you know which man you are? Look at how people treat your silence. If they ignore it, you are a fool. If they feel it, you are a force. This is not about becoming cruel, it's about becoming aware. Because the greatest mistake a man can make is to believe that his goodness will protect him. The world does not operate on goodness. It operates on gravity. And unless you become heavy enough, psychologically, emotionally, reputationally, people will keep lifting you, moving you, and discarding you like a feather in a storm. The fool doesn't just suffer. He is recycled, used, dumped, then used again. Not because he is unlucky, but because he refuses to change the one thing that matters: his orientation toward power. Until he sees life as a series of leverage points, until he begins to ask, what does this action signal, rather than, is this action nice? He will remain everyone's stepping stone. But the moment he wakes up, the moment he stops playing by the rules made for his obedience, he becomes dangerous. Not because he has changed who he is, but because he has finally stopped hiding what he could be. When a fool begins to wake up, the world around him starts to react violently, not with fists, but with guilt trips, with passive aggression, with sudden silence from people who once praised his kindness. Because here's the truth. The moment a fool stops being useful, he stops being liked. The moment he says no, they call him difficult. The moment he asserts a boundary, they call him arrogant. The moment he stops explaining, they say he's changed, and they don't mean it as a compliment. This is where most fools retreat. They feel the backlash, the social cold shoulder, the subtle exile, and they panic. They go back to being pleasant. They shrink. They call it choosing peace, but really, it's a return to slavery. Because it is easier to be accepted than to be respected. Acceptance requires compliance. Respect requires confrontation. And fools have been trained from birth to comply. But Machiavelli taught a darker, colder truth. Reputation is built not by your intentions, but by what others fear you might do. It is not kindness that protects you. It is consequence. And if people believe that treating you poorly will cost them something, they will hesitate. That moment of hesitation, that flicker of calculation in someone's mind, that is your protection. So how do you cultivate this? How do you go from a man others assume they can use to a man whose silence alone carries consequence? The process is subtle but surgical. First, you must stop narrating your life. Fools constantly announce everything. I just want peace. I'm a nice guy. I would never do that. Every time you explain who you are, you rob others of the chance to wonder. And in power games, wondering is everything. When people can't predict you, they respect you more, because unpredictability is risk. The fool is safe, predictably so. He'll always say yes, always forgive, always return. So the first move is to become harder to read. Start saying less, not coldly, but precisely. When someone offends you, don't laugh nervously or explain your feelings in full paragraphs. Just look at them. Say nothing. Let the tension breathe. You will see how quickly they fill the space with guilt or justification. That's leverage. Not from aggression, but from presence. Second, stop reacting immediately. The fool is impulsive. He answers texts instantly. He replies to insults defensively. He rushes to fix misunderstandings. Why? Because he fears disconnection. He thinks his value comes from availability. But the powerful man delays. He thinks before replying. He decides what message his response will send, not just what emotion it will relieve. A delayed reaction is a demonstration of control, and control is magnetic. When others see that you are not pulled by emotion, they begin to orbit around you instead. You become the center, not the chaser. And the man who is chased, even in silence, begins to hold psychological territory. Third, punish strategically. The fool avoids punishment entirely. He thinks it makes him noble. But Machiavelli warned that mercy, when habitual, becomes weakness. It is not wrong to punish. It is wrong to punish emotionally. The powerful man doesn't explode, he withdraws. He doesn't insult, he exits. He doesn't beg for change. He makes his absence feel like punishment. And here's the secret. When people feel your absence more than your presence, you've become power itself. This doesn't mean becoming cruel or manipulative. It means allowing people to face consequences. If someone disrespects you and you stay, what have you taught them? That your threshold is infinite, that your boundaries are suggestions, that your loyalty is unconditional even in pain. But if you walk, not with drama but with certainty, you teach them that crossing you comes with cost. Fourth, choose usefulness over likability. The fool wants to be liked, but likability is replaceable. Usefulness is not. The most powerful men in history weren't liked by everyone, but they were needed by many. If you can become someone people rely on, learn from, or benefit from, you don't have to beg for their approval. You have leverage, and leverage makes fools respect you even if they hate you. This is why Machiavelli valued utility above purity. A man who insists on being pure, good, noble, will eventually be destroyed by someone who is simply effective. Because the world doesn't ask, is he moral? It asks, is he useful? And once you start asking that question too, about yourself and about others, you begin to move with Machiavellian eyes. Fifth, develop a quiet edge. The fool is either overly soft or explosively reactive. He's either too nice or suddenly enraged. Both are signs of weakness. But the powerful man carries a quiet edge, a sense that he could be dangerous, even if he never acts on it. This is not about threats. It's about energy. It's about becoming the type of man whose silence makes people double-check their behavior. To build this edge, you must cut away softness. You must stop over-apologizing. Stop asking for permission to feel. Stop using self-deprecating humor to make others comfortable. You don't need to appear humble. You need to appear solid. When you stand firm, say little, and move with precision, you carry that rare quality, presence with pressure. Sixth, and perhaps most crucially, start auditing your environment. A fool surrounds himself with people who reinforce his role, people who praise his passivity, who exploit his loyalty, who fear his silence because it reveals their own emptiness. If you want to stop being a fool, you must stop being in rooms where your growth is seen as rebellion. Audit every relationship. Who drains you? Who only calls when they need something? Who grows uncomfortable when you start asserting boundaries? These people are not enemies, but they are obstacles. They need you to stay foolish so they can stay comfortable. And until you distance yourself from them, you will always be pulled back into your old self. There is a war happening in every man, between the fool and the force, between the part of him that wants to be liked and the part of him that wants to be free, between the boy who is told to be nice and the man who now must become ruthless, not in cruelty, but in clarity. Because clarity is what the fool lacks most. He thinks being good is enough, but goodness without clarity is blindness. Clarity tells you when to speak and when to stay silent, when to give and when to take, when to fight and when to walk. And above all, clarity tells you who you are when no one is watching and what you will no longer tolerate. The most dangerous transformation a man can undergo is not physical, it's perceptual. When others begin to look at you differently, when they stop assuming your kindness means access, when they begin to wonder what you really think of them, that's when the fool inside you dies. And in his place, something colder is born. Not cruel, not evil, just aware, watchful, precise, and eventually feared.